Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today, y'all, we are so excited about this. We've been gearing up for this for a couple of weeks, and Sarah and I have just been chatting away, just so thrilled to have a very different type of episode today. We are going to be interviewing the executive producer and the writer-director of Liquor Bank, the new short film from Adam and Marcellus. So folks, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hey guys, my name is Marcellus Cox. I'm the writer and director of Liquor Bank. Grateful for the opportunity to be here and discuss our film, which really means a lot to both me and Adam, and also to our amazing actors, Antoine Barnes and Sean Alexander James, who really brought our vision to life. So just grateful for the opportunity to discuss the film, and can't wait to see how everybody's reaction is once we start screening.
Yeah, and my name's Adam Freed. I'm the executive producer of Liquor Bank and could not be more thankful to the both of you for inviting us on your show. A show which, let me just throw out there really quick, I've been doing some listening to, and I have to throw you a compliment. Your frame-by-frame episodes are outstanding. Highly recommend. I just yesterday listened to the Dark Knight episode, and what I appreciate so much about what you are doing is I feel like in the world of content and podcast creation, especially when it applies to film, we spend so much time in a race trying to be first. But the fact that you two stop and you look at film really at like the cellular level, and rather than looking at a 2.5 hour film, you're looking at 15 minutes in depth. And I just think that that's such a refreshing approach. And it's one that I wish more people would take to. So really appreciate everything that you're putting into your show.
It means so much as we birthed that new concept, I think, Sarah, 6 months ago? So we're like, we don't know how it was received. Do people want this or not? Do they want to think about a show or a piece of content all up? So encouraging to hear that. We're going to keep doing more of those.
Yeah, please do.
Really
it works. I can't wait to listen to the next one.
Love it. Love it. Y'all, we're so excited to dive in. We want to hear a little bit more about each of you. And I think starting from maybe a little bit of your backgrounds, but also what's your origin story with film? And how did you get introduced to this world and feel so compelled and inspired to really invest in it, both time, money, resources, attention, energy, passion? Yeah. What's y'all's origin stories?
I always said that my pure first love with cinema, and I always did back to it. It always started with my grandmother. My love for any form of movies, any form of even television, has always stemmed from my grandmother. Her love for movies like the LA Rebellions, from the likes of filmmakers of Charles Burnett, to the likes of Julie Dash, to the likes of Hermione Gunther or Billy Woodbury. And I was watching those at an early age, taking our trips into LA. And going to places like New Bath. New Bath was just really starting to gear up, not like how it is now if you're in LA. So, or even going to Rialto in Pasadena, watching older movies. So that's where I guess my love is. It started around 9 years old, and now being in my mid-30s, just having that passion and still be creating and still loving it more and more, and just getting better at the craft. Whether it was being at film school, starting out, and then just learning from previous professors and just learning from this filmmakers, working on sets as a PA all the way to becoming a director myself. So it's been an interesting journey. I don't really talk about myself too much from this perspective, but I made previous work, making my first feature, Mickey Hardaway, a couple of years ago, which has become critically acclaimed. It was more than I ever expected it to be, but I'm forever grateful to have that opportunity to make that feature. And now here we are with Liquor Bank, and yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out, and hopefully we'll begin working on the second feature.
Yeah, Marcellus's story is an interesting one. Mine is very different. I'm like your prototypical video store kid. We had the family tradition that every Friday we were going to the local video. We weren't even going to the Blockbuster. We were going to suburban video in suburban Chicago. And my mom would literally put me on a stopwatch, and she'd say, "You got 30 minutes and you get to bring home 4." And I'm old enough to be a VHS kid. And I would just I would marvel first, of course, at the cover. They say don't judge a movie by the cover, but it matters. And I just would read the backs of boxes. And I would come back with stacks of 8, 9, 10. And mom would say, "No, you can only have 4." And that's for the whole weekend, right? So you watch and you rewind. I evolved from that to being an Entertainment Weekly kid. If you guys remember print magazines back when that used to happen. So I come from it more from like a fan's perspective. That turned into me becoming a writer. I run an entertainment website. And so I've been a film critic for a little while, and that's really where my story, my passion for film, my story intersects with Marcellus. Because a couple of years ago, this independent filmmaker reached out and he said, "Hey, I've got this feature that I would love for you to review, and it's called Mickey Hardaway." And I watched Marcellus's film, and it was the first that I had heard of him and the first I became familiar with his work. And I got done watching it, and my jaw was on the floor. And I woke up the next morning, and the first thing I did is I shot him an email, and I was like, "Hey, thanks for sharing Mickey Hardaway with me. I want to interview you. I want to meet you. I want to push this thing forward." So we scheduled a time last June that I could be out in LA, and we had a really nice lunch, and we sat and we talked, and we might get into it, but he's got this tremendous notebook of ideas, right? And he was just spilling these ideas over this lunch, and I was kind of looking this way and that, and I was like, "Dude, you sure anybody's not going to like be in the bushes listening to all these concepts?" But one of the ideas that he brought up was this liquor bank concept, and as we kind of walked around LA that day, it kind of came to fruition that not my involvement directly right away, but I knew he was on to something. He has a great eye. Marcellus is someone who isn't afraid to tell a gritty story when the gritty story needs to be told. And I was really attracted to that right away. And so that's kind of where he and I met, and we kind of have teamed from that point forward.
No, that's great. I was a Blockbuster Video kid because we didn't have any other video store near me growing up, and I went through the same little dance when I was a kid too. Always coming with too many movies, and my mom was like, "No, you have to put some back. You can only have like 3 or 4." So I very much get that. So like we've been talking about, Liquor Bank is this new film. I'm very quickly going to read an IMDb summary about it, and then maybe we can get into unpacking it a little bit more. So the summary for Liquor Bank is: a young man relapses, missing his 1-year sobriety anniversary party at his local AA support group. Which is, like you were saying, Adam, it is a great premise. It is a very meaningful premise. I know I was able to relate to this. I imagine a lot of people can relate to this. So why this story? Like, why did you want to tell this particular story that you explore in Liquor Bank?
Yeah. Marcellus, why don't you talk a little bit about the origin? Because I think Eddie's story is a fascinating one.
So the origin of the story goes back to 2023. I just finished my feature, Mickey Hardaway, and I met a producer over at PBS, Brian Sherwood, who's now an executive over at A24. And he was the one who introduced me to Eddie Moeller. And Eddie was about maybe a year back from Iraq. And we were sitting inside the theater talking. And then, hearing the story, I was extremely fascinated by it. I remember he invited me to his home in Leimert Park in LA. And we sat in his apartment and we talked about the story and just being fascinated. One, about his service fighting overseas for our freedom, but even more so just trying to figure out like how things have reverted back to society coming back from war, and what led to his drinking problems becoming even more of a bigger issue. I always try to look at it from this perspective of, as an artist, it's a fascinating story, but as a human being, it's a depressing. And I always said, if I were to do this, how would I do it justice? And I felt like I had to talk to a sponsor, which I talked to Baker, and Baker was really nice, sweet, flattering man. And just hearing even more of the stories that I guess Eddie was a little afraid to tell, which I can understand. As human beings, we can be embarrassed at certain moments in our lives. And, hearing those, and I had to really dissect the story more and more. And I wasn't sure if I was the one to do it justice. And I remember somewhere around December 2024, I had another project I was going to do that fizzled out, and then funding came available for this. And I ended up meeting with Eddie and his wife, who he's with now, before they moved to Florida. And I told him I was going to do it. He gave his blessing on it. And I let him read the script. And he actually gave me notes on things that I guess that even went further than what I had planned for it. So get his blessing and to actually be able to tell his story and his vision really meant the world to me. And I'm just forever grateful for the opportunity to do so, because I feel like It speaks not only to people who've had issues with alcohol and people who are coming back from war and it felt like that there is a part of this world that just basically treat them like they're not even human beings half the time anymore, and how that conflicts with alcoholism. So just be able to showcase that, and I felt like that this was more of a teaching tool than anything. So for him to give his blessing, and it seemed like for brilliant film minds like you guys who took the opportunity to allow me to discuss it and let me know that I did something right with it.
Yeah, Marcellus, the thing that you brought up that really strikes a chord with me is this is a human story. And even though, people who suffer addiction tend to be at times pushed aside by society or sometimes unfairly judged, I don't know who on earth ever wants to be judged in their worst moment, whether that's in traffic, in line at the grocery store, on your worst day of work, whatever it is. And I think, what has been accomplished by this film is you are showing someone in Eddie at their absolute lowest moment. And that's a breaking point, but it doesn't break them. And you have to believe with his service to our country, his ongoing battle with addiction, that he's been through a lot, but we are left to believe that his greatest days are still ahead. And I think that's one of the messages that I resonated with right away, even in the early, production process, was that this is a story that is a mirror to people who are struggling, but at the same time, it is an opportunity to say that doesn't have to be tomorrow. That's today. But like who we are today doesn't have to be who we are tomorrow. And I think in that sense, yes, it is a difficult watch at times for people that are suffering, but I found it incredibly motivational as well.
Just to build on what you both shared, and what comes through so clearly in the heart of this film is that it's for both sides of this relationship. Sometimes when films focus so heavily on one character, the other characters are just meant to support that story, and it felt like this story was for everyone who's on all sides of this equation in these situations. I think that quote that you include at the end, when it cuts to black and there's that quote that comes up, really encompasses that. There's those that you can deeply relate to and feel seen in those lowest moments, and having a little bit of hope to walk another day and try again. But also for those that are walking alongside those folks, and how to pour out and love and extend a hand to those that are needing that person in their life, to see them, to call them to higher, to believe in them when they can't for themselves. I think that there's such a balance in bringing those two sides of this together. It's not just Eddie's story, it's not just Baker's story, but it really is their story together, and the relationship they have and the trust and rapport they have that's on full display in the story too. So I think that really rings true and comes through in just a short amount of time through what's on screen.
I really appreciate you noticing that about it really being a two-handed story. I mean, this is about two characters. And the thing that I think a lot of people who've seen the film may not know if they haven't had experience in any form of like addiction counseling or any form of AA is that in order to become a sponsor, Baker had to walk those shoes himself. He is not coming at this from a hypocritical point of view. He's had his own struggles, and he's a guy that had to kind of pave his own path. And so he's looking at Eddie with sympathy and sometimes with a firm hand, but it's because he's been there and he's done that. And he's just trying to help, his fellow man along.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo that same thing. For me, when I got a chance to meet with Baker, I that's where the story really kind of shifted, because it was somewhat heavenly towards Eddie. But then the more I met with Baker and I heard his story, and you can kind of see both worlds intertwined, that's to me where it really felt more of a real human, like universal story. That this is just basically just is one and one A. And that was the way that I began to break it down and to try to structure the story. I felt like there was just no way that I could do it justice without including both perspectives. It's not even really more so much as a brotherly love story. It really is just I saw it from my own angle, seeing numerous family members struggle with alcohol and struggle with drugs, and even I have had to some degree some sort of struggle with alcohol, learning to cut back and stop drinking as much because I've seen what it's done to others. So I have to have my own personal flair in it, because for me, I couldn't tell the story if I wasn't emotionally connected to it. It's easy to just tell one side A, side B, but you have to add your own personal flair in it. And I feel like if I didn't have my experience with it, I don't think I could have done the story justice.
And the gift and the curse of that, of the story evolving into a two-hander, is on the production side of it. You go from having one really good actor and needing one really good performance that, we knew Antoine Barnes is capable of. But now on the other hand, now you've got to have a Baker that's willing to go blow for blow from a performance point of view. And we were just so fortunate that Sean Alexander James is as gifted as he is. And I think that the two gentlemen just really play off of each other so well, and just couldn't have worked out better as really a two-man story.
I love the peek behind kind of what went into the process of creating the story and pinpointing and identifying, scoping, and workshopping the story, because the intention that you had to tell a human story is very clear in your process too, and I think that's what also creates an output that is so like emotionally resonant as this film is, because you are focusing on the humans first, the people that you're meeting and the stories that they're telling you, and then translating that into such a scoped amount of time. I'm curious if you can share a little bit more of how did you decide, like, when in the trajectory in the arc, and why this moment, and to start this from like the morning when he's waking up, that alarm. When I think about this film, I think about that relentless alarm in the morning and that haze that is so, I think, universal maybe for a lot of people that have been through experiences that are similar or resonant with this, of just like you wake up and you're like, man, what did I do? That feeling and the alarm kind of calling you back to reality is so potent. So I'm curious, some of those creative choices that you made to bring the emotions of the story to life in a visual way or through the storytelling too. How did you make some of those choices?
Well, just off top, from the whole perspective of the haze and the way that the alarm hits, I've had that several times myself uh, when drinking and creating. So I kind of knew, and people would think I'm crazy when I say this. The day before I finished the script, I actually went out and drunk, and I did that just so I could wake up the next morning, so I could be able to see, like, okay, what is a real hangover really like? So, and I made my notes of it. Obviously, I have it in my notebook. I made notes of, okay, this is how I felt. This is what I was going through. So now I know how, when I'm writing it and when I'm giving it the notes to Antoine, who played it perfectly, this is how we're supposed to do it. So I basically sacrificed my own body for that creative perspective. I
Marcellus is the first ever method director.
to some degree, yes.
Better you than me, my
years.
friend.
Yes.
Well, you know what? It doesn't take much. This a couple beers, a double shot of Henny. That was really got it going, but from that perspective, yes. But overall, the biggest thing, the trajectory of it for me creatively, was going to several AA meetings within the LA area. I went to one in Harbor City, and I went to another one in San Pedro. And I got to sit down with people who were going through these issues. And I went over my notes and I went over my ideas. And I even shared the script with a lot of the people in there, just to get feedback on what it is that you're struggling with, what it is that you're going through on a daily. How is it that you're getting close to your year of sobriety or a 2-year sobriety? What are some of the challenges that you face? How are you like, how are you acting during those certain moments? So I left out with about maybe almost 30 pages worth of notes from each session that I went to. And I just kind of went back to my desk and I'm breaking everything down into sections. Okay, so I think this is how I'll go here. This is how I would do this here. And I'm just basically just going off of the truth from what I was told from every individual who has dealt with this situation. So for me, creatively, I owe a a gratitude to the people who are dealing with addictions. And for me, with a story like this, I'm always going to be on the side of humanity as opposed to being on the side of where it has to feel extremely dark. I don't mind being gritty. I don't mind, being like bold and in your face, but at the same time, you have to understand that these are still people. These are still human beings. These are still individuals who are fighting. They're trying. So I never want to do it from any perspective where I feel it will humiliate them. I would do it from a truthful perspective, but never from the point where I feel like it will lose its soul.
Yeah, and just in the experiences, I think that, Marcellus and I have both had around alcoholism and AA. It's it's the imperfect balance between selfishness and self-loathing. People that are really struggling with addiction. And I think we really see that in Eddie's character, in that, there's this couple dashes of hopelessness, but also the selfishness of, I don't care what my appearance at my 1 year anniversary means to anybody else, because I give up. I've gotten to this point where it's been so hard and so grueling, and I don't care about tomorrow. And that's an inherently selfish thing, but that's also the product of the disease. And that's why when he finds a way beyond his self-loathing, and he kind of pushes back those yellowish hazy curtains, and their story finally steps outside, we realize it's a sunshiny day, and like there's a whole world out there that is available that has nothing to do with putting alcohol into your body. And day by day, it gets just a little bit easier until it eventually starts to feel normal. And we never get to experience that normalcy through Eddie's character. But what we're hoping is that all of the individuals who watch this, who have felt these struggles, they'll say, man, it's going to get better. The same way that we feel like Baker's character was nudging him toward.
Yeah, I love what you guys have both shared, because you feel that while you're watching the film. There's so much empathy in the way that this film is made, and it's so easy to judge, but this film is so empathetic and just honoring of these stories, and that just absolutely comes through. So we've already touched on a couple of scenes. The alarm clock is so good. Are there any other shots or maybe even lines of dialogue that were particularly noteworthy to you, or that like really were pivotal to you in making this movie?
For me personally, if I had to pick one, without giving the movie away for those who haven't seen it, I love the kitchen scene where it's right at the moment where you see Eddie grabs the beer and he's looking at Baker, and he just says, I'm a hopeless cause. Just leave me alone. And Baker looks back at him and he says, I can't. To me, I think that is the pure emphasis of the movie. When you see someone who was surely at their absolute lowest of lows, where they just basically telling you, this is it. I'm not going to change. And you have a man right there who's been there, who's done that, who knows what you're going through. And he tells you, I'm here. I can't. And then it's the moment where you see he grabs the weapon and he goes after him, and it just leads to an altercation. Those type of moments, because I've seen it with relatives. I've seen it with friends in that situation who have dealt with drinking and even or smoking or anything like that that inflicts a situation like this. So that was very personal to me, and that was something that I really wanted to showcase, because as Adam said earlier, it's a disease. It's something that is curable, but you have to be the one to make the cure. And you have people who are willing to help, but you have to be the one to cure it. So that was something personally that stuck to me in the film, artistically for me.
I wrote down that line. I think he says in that conversation, I know that Baker says to Eddie, I know who you are. I see your potential. And that, speaking of identity and knowing that like the situation you find yourself in right now and the choices you've made is not who you are. I think that was so powerful. And this kind of calls back to something that I think both of you mentioned earlier about this being almost this teachable model for how to navigate situations like that. I wonder if that was part of the thinking or intention, or kind of maybe just a byproduct. But I had that same thought while watching this, of the way that Baker is relating and navigating the situation with Eddie and loving him the ways that he needs at that moment, both empathizing with him, but also there's a firmness while also coupled with an empathy that I think is a really beautiful model. And I'm curious if that was part of the thinking behind how those lines were structured, specifically from Baker.
So a lot of that was teachable moments. I think a lot of the biggest reasons why it came off that way is because when you meet Baker, who the character is based on, he is that. He's the true emphasis of that. A man who is honest, he's straightforward, he's no BS, but he's loving, he's caring. You feel like this is a man you've known for years, even if you've never met him the first day in your life. He's the big kind of jolly guy who will give you a hug immediately, and he'll talk talk BS to you at the same time, but he says it in a manner in which you'll get it and you'll appreciate it and you'll love him for it. So that was the way that the character I wanted to emphasize it because that's the man. And I felt like when I was writing the lines, I felt like I had to, in many ways, just think like him. And even he was somewhat impressed by that when he saw the film. And hopefully he'll hear this interview. I'll send it to him. But but yeah, I felt like when it came to those type of situations, it's because of who he is as a human being. He is loving, he is caring, but he's not afraid to get in your ass if he has to. And I felt like that was the way that he had to approach Eddie. There was no way that he could be either one way or the other. If you be too mean, you can really crush this guy and destroy him even further. If you're too soft to him, then you basically let him get away. It has to be 50-50. You have to be able to say, hey, you're effing up at the same time. Just know I'm here and I still love you. It's reassuring. So but that's just who the man is. And I felt like the way I was breaking that down was purely just a mere reflection of who Baker as a human being is. And of course, Sean Alexander James being the actor that he is, playing that role to perfection, eh, bringing those words to life. And I don't think there's any other actor who could have done that role the proper justice than Sean Alexander James. And I'm grateful for him being able to come on board and actually bring those words and bring this character to life. And I'm forever grateful to both of them because when you meet Sean, he's the same way as well. He's the nicest human being you'll ever meet. But Sean isn't afraid to tell you the truth as well. So that's why it was just a perfect balance of, you got lucky with the words in the script because of a great human being, but then you got even better luck because you had an even greater actor to bring it up.
Yeah, there's a sense of tough love in his character that's required. I don't know if a lot of people know this about Alcoholics Anonymous, but it really is. It works kind of like a generational chain of dominoes. And from its inception, unless it worked on a generation of people, well, how the heck could the next generation of people learn from anyone that it's worked from? It's a lot like modern medicine in that way, right? It has to build on itself. So there is a stubbornness and then like it's almost like an emphatic and aggressive form of empathy on his part that when he's looking at Eddie and he says, no, like I'm not leaving because I see something special in you. His domino hasn't tipped yet. And the next day, the 5 years later, the 10 years later, well, that's going to be Eddie in someone else's apartment having that same conversation, paying it forward. And that's really, I think, the community of Alcoholics Anonymous that people may not see or know is that it really has to be generationally passed along. We learn to become who we are from the people that raise us. People learn to live a sober and healthy life from the people who raise them within that program. And that involves some tough moments. You get grounded when you're a kid, you screw stuff up, right? And in a sobriety sense, Eddie was screwing it up. And Baker, acting as a caring and nurturing person, he had to put his foot down. And that's, I think, the strength of the story.
And I think that also helps to, emphasize the humanity of it all, like we've been talking about, because no one is one thing and neither of these characters are caricatures. Like they feel like real people. And that just comes through the screen so well based on the directing, the writing, and obviously the performances as well. I'm going to pivot us very quickly is obviously making a movie is a very big deal. Like, this is an accomplishment here. So we just need to celebrate that. But I'm also wondering if we can even have a peek further behind the curtain of were there any hiccups or roadblocks that you hit along the way? And then like, how did you overcome them?
I don't know what the roads are like where you guys live, but there's quite a few roads in Chicago that got more potholes than pavement, if you know what I'm saying. So I think a lot of times people get the idea that the film industry is like, it's the Cannes Film Festival, it's tuxedos and parties and red carpets. Marcellus will tell you some stories here, but I'm here in this partnership because of a massive pothole. That's how I got involved. And he can tell you the story, but yes, the whole thing is a difficult process. Don't let anybody lie to you about that.
No, he's definitely correct about that. I have plenty of stories. I mean, how much time we really got. For the most part, the biggest thing was at the end of the day, we ran out of funds to finish the film. Main investor I had, who was the one that gave us the money to shoot the film, had to bail out because his mother had passed. Kind of went through the motions of trying to crowdfund, which did not go well.
So I at one point reached out to Marcellus just to check in because I knew it was in production. And I was like, hey, how's Liquor Bank coming? And he's like, man, we've hit a very serious roadblock with funding.
Mm.
And having met with him and having, analyzed some of his work and knowing how much of this story I truly believed in and I thought would resonate with multiple spheres of people. Because
Yeah.
this is not just an addiction story. This is a veteran story. This is a story about human interaction. This is a story about self-improvement. And, he and I had a conversation and he came up with a number that was needed to kind of Frankenstein this thing back to life. And, after talking to my wife and, it would have been a shame in my estimation for Liquor Bank to die on the vine. And I'm here because I believe with my whole heart in Marcellus and I believe in this story and I believe in these performers. And I couldn't let that happen in good conscience. So that's kind of how I got involved from a financial perspective and from post-production to this interview. We have had a very productive partnership, a very successful one being a small budget short independent film, to have nearly 50 reviews on IMDb, 15 on Rotten Tomatoes with a 100% score. And I don't mean to sound like I'm tooting our own horn, but short independent films don't get this, right? And it's getting this because of the merit of this story and because people are starting to believe what I learned a couple of years ago is that Marcellus has something special. And it's just putting that special in front of the right set of eyes. And I consider that to be my passion and my drive to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, and extremely forever grateful for that. Because that was, to me, the biggest thing at the end of the day was it doesn't really, to me, matter about any awards or any amount of money like being received or, put into my pocket. I just wanted to showcase the story because of what it means. Not just from, like Adam said, just an alcoholic perspective, but just from a veteran perspective, it's a human being perspective. That was the focal point. That was the pure focus at the end of the day was being able just to showcase this story, showcase what it means and what it's saying, what is its values, what is its true course, and to be able to see it come to life and to see it have a life after that is just the greatest humbling feeling. And I think any filmmaker will tell you that is not about our own selfish pleasures financially or anything like that. It's about seeing a vision come to life and to be able to really truly see that there's an audience for this and the fact that there are so many people who are attracted to this. And, it really is the greatest and most humblest feeling in the world as an artist. And that's all I ever wanted to see. And if anything, creatively comes from that, then that's great. That's just icing on the cake. But the fact that the story has become the focal point is without question the number one thing and the most important thing to me. So I'm forever grateful to Adam because without him, we wouldn't have this opportunity to be able to have a scene because it literally was about to die. I was about to shelf it.
And that's the beauty of a partnership. And you two run a wonderful partnership, right? You host this show that is growing day by day, and you ping pong these great ideas off of each other, and you're trying new things and you're experimenting and you meet roadblocks and you meet failure. But I can only imagine how fulfilling it is and how artistically elevating it is to get to host a show like this where you can go in different directions. And that's exactly how Marcellus and I feel. But what I think he experienced was he couldn't do it alone. But without his script and his direction and his artistic eye, I'd just be a guy sitting on the couch. So we need each other in that sense. And I think that like any good partnership, that is what's required to, get the best possible result out of this picture.
And at a meta level, this works on so many layers because that's the heart of this film as well is we need each other and we can't go it alone, we shouldn't go it alone, and how much can we pour into each other so that we actually run farther together. And I feel like even the behind the scenes and the birthing process of creating this film and you two coming together, using your gifts in such specific ways and the puzzle pieces fitting to create something that is so powerful, that is the heart of the movie that is also being displayed behind the camera, behind all of the planning meetings and stuff as well. So that's it's just all cool and poetic at a higher level, which I think is really, really neat and really beautiful. And thank you for sharing about some of those roadblocks and whatnot. I think it's really powerful for people to hear about the things that don't go well. Like it's great to see something that gets birthed into the world, but along the way, it's tough. And especially the business and the commerce side of what it takes to strategically create works of art, it's challenging. And it's something that Sarah and I are pretty captivated as well of like, how do things get made and all of the pieces that need to fall into place in order to bring those creative visions to life is a whole half of what can be created or not, or doesn't get funded. And some of those creative ideas that sit on the shelf, but ultimately get to come down and be on display. So thank you for sharing all of that.
I wish that the next time you're in LA, I'll take you to the UCLA Film Archive and you'll see there's so many brilliant films that have never seen the light of day that they only show you like on the 16, 35 millimeter reels, Super 8s. I mean, you'll see some of the most brilliant works by filmmakers who just never got the opportunity, and there's no disrespect. There's room for every film, but there's art house or where there's commercial. But I just feel like the more work that actually artistically has something to say that just never sees the light of day is something that just kind of really like just kind of just infuriates and kills me. So, I tell people all the time, you have to fight for your right to see your vision come to life. And by all means, if you have to go at it independently, then you just got to do what you got to do. But don't ever let that art die. Don't ever let it sit, because if you do, it's just absolute waste. And somebody's going to discover something I've done maybe 50, 100 years from now when I'm not here. I would hope that they know that my art and my soul was in it. And it wasn't just because it was just crumbled by somebody of the higher beings.
So can we figure out how to clone Adam? Because I think the world needs more Adams as well to bring art to life. I think Adam, hearing your story and that conviction that you felt enough to like invest in this film so deeply and believing in Marcellus and the vision, I think it's a beautiful part of this story and the other side of what brings art to life too, that I think is really important to tell those sides of it as well. So we'll have to figure out how to clone you.
Look, we're going to have to run that by my wife. I think most days she thinks one of me is enough.
One is enough.
She's like, ooh, not so great on that idea. But I really appreciate you saying that. That's very thoughtful of you.
We are so grateful that you both have worked so hard to bring this to life, put in all of the hours, the effort, the finances, all of the things. So if people are listening, and obviously we have been raving about Liquor Bank, and they want to watch it or support it, like how can people watch Liquor Bank? How can they support this endeavor? Because it should be watched, it should be supported. How can people help you guys out with this movie?
Well, right now, because you're ready to begin on the festival circuit, it's not available. But I will say this: if you are a film reviewer or a film critic who would like to see it, you can always reach out to myself. My email is coxmarcellus@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to submit a screener. If you're someone who's just interested in general, you can always reach out as well on the same email. I'm more than happy to share a private link password. Make sure it's not downloadable, so you can't just take it. But I'm more than happy to share the message and to be able to allow an audience to see it. Hopefully, by the end of November, we will be having the film streamed not only online, but on television as well. That is the plan, to be done with our run in November. So once that is available, I will post it on my social platforms. But until then, just simple email. I'm more than happy to share the film.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why, and we've been asked that a lot, like, hey, how can I see this? Is it in my area? And the answer is no, and it's because a lot of the festivals mandate that your film is premiered in their region. And they don't want it to be something that people have already seen on the Netflix Shorts tab, or they've seen on, Max or whatever they're changing the name of the app to this week.
HBO Max Part 2.
It's back, baby. So they just want to make sure that what they're offering to their audiences who pay, a decent buck to go to these festivals is they want to give them original content and they want to provide content. So the method behind our madness is, as we, with fingers crossed, I say this, if we were to be accepted into festivals and we were very strategic regionally about where we did that, and I know that you guys have listeners and, via Instagram, there's people all over the place. So they can go see it live at whatever, festival is in their area. But from the eyes that go on it in those festivals, to Marcellus's point, distribution becomes a possibility. Places like PBS, I mentioned Netflix, I mentioned Prime. So there's a lot of different avenues for a short film to live, either in a lease for 12 months, 24 months, in perpetuity, outright purchasing. So those are all conversations on the business side of things that need to happen, but we are in the pre-screening phase. So we feel a little bit ahead of the game with where we are critically, where we are in terms of support, but really there's a long way to go. If we're running a marathon, we're like on mile 5. And so there's a long way for us to go. And yeah, and just to add, I know Marcellus gave his email. I'm at Movie Archer on all of the social media platforms. So if anybody wants to reach out, if they'd like a review or a screener, we're definitely happy to provide that in specific cases. But that's kind of the way that the sausage is made when it comes to these festivals.
That's another conversation at the end of the day too. Just the whole sitting and waiting perspective.
Yeah.
And then the fact that when they are late, just letting you know if your film is accepted or not, and it's not enough time to prepare to even attend. So that's a conversation for another day.
It's a little like Rick's Cafe in Casablanca. We sit and we sit and we wait and we wait.
You don't even get Sam to play some tunes for you. You're just sitting in silence. My gosh.
I know.
I know.
We're also not a woe is me story. We're gonna be
about an hour ago.
Really?
I was watching it on Prime Video. So the fact that you even brought that up.
Y'all, your brains are just fusing together as one.
I know.
Over time. Yeah.
We spent a lot of time together via Zoom.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. All right. Well, any other last thoughts, or is there any questions top of mind for you that we want to make sure to hit on before we wrap? I think it sounds like people just being able to support, and especially if they're movie people, it sounds like to be able to offer those reviews and to drum up that energy in that community specifically is kind of the phase that you're at right now.
Critics podcasts are all very helpful within the independent industry. If I could really quickly give a shout out, independent films, the first thing that you give up on is a marketing budget, because, movies like Mission Impossible, Jurassic Park, that's coming out on the 4th of July, those movies have production budgets that spend per hour more than we will over the lifetime of our short film. So I ran into a very gifted artist by the name of Chris Hodge, and I shared a screener of the film. He watched it and he said, I want to work for you pro bono. He was willing. He created our poster art, which I think is distinct. It came from his mind after having seen the film. And he sent a couple of rough pencil sketches to Marcellus, and, the three of us kind of worked together. But I just want to show some appreciation for Chris Hodge, who you can follow on Instagram at @CHodgeArt. He is a brilliant artist, and he's made 0 pennies on the work that he's done for us, with the promise that going forward, he's the first call with anything that, Marcellus and I may do together. So just wanted to share thanks to him, because visual recognition of a project happens through marketing materials like posters, and he made that come to life for us.
Yeah, to echo what Adam said, special thank you to Chris, because Chris's work really is the antithesis of what our film is. It speaks more volumes than he'll ever know in terms of what it is right from the beginning. Before you even look at the film, you see the artwork, you already know, okay, we're on for a journey. So thank you to Chris. For me, I would also love to throw a shout out. Obviously, they're not here, but to Antoine Barnes and Sean Alexander James, our cast, because without them, we're not here. As much as I can do behind the camera and behind the scenes, a director can only go so far if he doesn't have the right cast. And the two of them are absolutely amazing. They're the heartbeat of the film, and their performances are are the reason why we're discussing this today, even more so about it than the actual story between Eddie and Baker. So for them, just want to say thank you to you guys. Forever grateful and appreciative to you. Even more so to Eddie Moeller for allowing us to tell his story. Eddie hopefully will be in LA if we do have our world premiere screening in July, which I believe will be. He will be in attendance, so I'm looking forward to him actually meeting the cast and the crew. And even more so, just thank you to all of the wonderful critics and reviewers, the podcasters who have said, "Hey, we love the film, we enjoy it, we love to discuss it," and I mean you guys as well, giving us the amazing platform to discuss it. And for me, one more, this Adam. Adam is the reason why we're here today. He's the reason why this film is where it's at. Because without him, I mean, it's no telling what would be. So I'm forever grateful for everything that he's done and allowing this film to be so.
That's the joy of partnership, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So great. So great. All of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into this across so many humans that brought this together. But that's, I think, seeing the people really buy in. That's the greatest impact you could ever have, from a piece of art, is just people believe in it. They don't even, there's no gain. They just want it. They want to support it. They want to advocate for it. They want to invest it themselves. Like, that is so powerful. So we hope that the momentum continues to multiply over the course of, it sounds like, the next couple of weeks and months especially. We're rooting for y'all. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It was awesome.
John and Sarah, thank you so much for your time, for your platform, and just for spreading the good word, fighting for the little guys here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both. Yeah, we're just so thrilled by this interview. There's so many great nuggets in here. I was jotting down timestamps of just like golden nuggets that you guys are saying that I think are really important to share more broadly on all of our socials. We want to support this with the reach and the audience and the influence that we have here in our little corner of the world. So yeah, thank you both. Well, our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today and our two guests. What an amazing time. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you tune to your favorite shows. We can't wait to share all of the ways to get in contact with these folks and some of the ways that you can continue to follow and root for and support the trajectory of the next couple of months, and perhaps even beyond, okay, for the two of them, and even future projects that they're going to bring to the world. So we'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes as well. So definitely check them out, follow, see what else they get up to over the next months and years. You can connect with us, Movies and Us, here on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or you can email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other show, TV and Us. We'll be back next week to discuss a film that's having a 30-year anniversary year. It's Friday, 1995 Friday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might just stay right in this window for that one. Oh.
We have two great guests for that one. That film is like part of their DNA. They grew up on it.
How are you going to get fired on your day off?
Well, to be fair, I grew up 10 minutes from the house, so.
No way. That's
So
it.
the house,
South Central,
if I can kill it, it's in Gardena. So if anybody's in LA, you want to go check it out, go in Gardena and see it.
I love that. That's sick. Yeah, it's a fun combo. Yeah, it'll be out next week. In the meantime, we hope you all have an amazing weekend. We'll talk again with you very soon.